And I would like to give the floor to our moderator, Ms. Tetiana Yasinska. Over to you.
Всім добрий день, вітаю учасників
Hi,
конференції.
everyone.
Дуже рада всіх
Welcome,
бачити.
conference participants. It
І
is
ми
a pleasure
розпочинаємо
to see
нашу
all of you
дискусію.
here. And let us kick
Наголосить на
off with our
важливості і
round table.
актуальності
I would like to
тематики
emphasize
нашого
the importance of the
виступу
topic
із
of our round
доповіддю
table.
на тему
And first,
потенціал
would like to give the floor to Rina
після
Litvin, who will talk
воєнної
about the
відбудови
potential of
країни,
technological
успішні
startups and
кейси
the post-war
українських
recovery
стартапів,
of the
надати
country,
технічну
successful cases of
допомогу
Ukrainian
до
startups.
менеджменту і міжнародної
And it will be done by
Національного
Rina
університету
Litvin,
Львівська
teaching
політехніка.
economics and associate
Ірина,
professor at the Department of Management International Business, Lviv Polytechnic National
Доброго
University.
дня,
The floor is
шановні
yours.
учасники конференції, шановні колеги круглого
Hello,
Мені
ladies
дуже
and
приємно
gentlemen. It
брати
is a
участь
pleasure
тут
for
із
me
співприятком
to
програми.
participate
І
and to
шановні
be a part
учасники,
of this
перейти
program.
до нашого
So
круглого
I
столу.
would like to
Варто
start
зазначити,
without any
що
further ado.
повномасштабне
It
вторгнення,
worth
яке
mentioning that full-scale
відбулося
invasion
в лютому
that
2022 року
started in February
Росії в Україну,
2022,
воно стало найбільшим
Russia's
військовим
invasion in
конфліктом з
Ukraine,
часів Другої
became the
світової війни
largest
в Європі.
conflict
І
starting World War
внаслідок
II in
інтенсивних
Europe.
бойових дій,
And
масштабних
due to the intensive
руйнувань,
armed
наша країна
hostilities
зазнала
and large-scale
значних збитків. Тобто були
destruction, our country
зруйновані житлова,
was
транспортна,
impacted a lot.
енергетична інфраструктура.
The residential buildings were affected, transportation, energy, and social infrastructure have all been affected, let alone millions of Ukrainians losing their lives, their health deteriorating, losing their homes, jobs, and the chance to live in safety. Assessing the damage done by the war to our country and developing effective recovery strategies for our country are of critical importance for the future growth and flourishing of our country. It is worth noting that reconstruction does not only require substantial financial resources, I would even say pretty big resources, but also modern technological solutions that can ensure velocity, efficiency, and sustainability of our country's recovery. Our round table is dedicated to innovations in entrepreneurship. It brings together people who will try to convey the importance of entrepreneurial activities and initiatives that come from business people and that matter for the post-war recovery of our country. I will be talking about the potential of technological startups. And I would like to briefly present some successful examples of Ukrainian startups that are already helping our country big time. It is worth mentioning that the potential of technological startups in Ukraine's post-war reconstruction is of utmost importance for the recovery of the Ukrainian economy following this massive destruction caused by Russian military aggression. The war has caused unprecedented losses in almost all areas, but at the same time, it also emphasized the need for efficient modern approaches to restoration. And the technological startups are one of the drivers for the post-war recovery of Ukraine, since they can contribute to quick digitalization of all the processes and development of innovative solutions that are crucial for our country. Here we're talking about construction, energy, transportation, healthcare, education, etc. And of course, high-tech solutions will not only contribute to the physical restoration of the country, but also to its economic growth, since in most cases, startups are the key driver for economy, since they result in job creation, they attract investment, and they will also help us to expand export potential of the country. Therefore, it is vital for Ukraine's recovery. I'd like to also tell you a few words about the damage done to the Ukrainian economy. Of course, sadly, with every day of war, this damage keeps increasing. I have the data for January 2024. Then this number is going to blow your minds. It's 152 billion USD. Now, talking about different types of properties that were damaged, we can mention residential buildings, infrastructure facilities, industry, assets of enterprises, agriculture, and energy sector. Well, you can see it on the slide, and you can see the assessment of damages as well as share of damages by property type. The most affected regions are Donetsk, Kharkiv, Zaporizhia, Kherson, Kyiv oblasts. It is worth noting that life has been affected big time, because again, we're talking about the residential infrastructure, healthcare facilities, various educational institutions, cultural and tourist facilities, aside from that, industrial facilities. Now, talking about the roads that have been destroyed. The most roads have been destroyed in Kharkiv Oblast, in Zaporizhia Oblast, Donetsk Oblast, and Kherson Oblast. So basically, damage is huge. And as the experts are outlining, the amount of this damage keeps increasing with every day, but it is already over 750 billion US dollars. And this is why Ukraine faces multiple challenges during post-war recovery. We need to rebuild infrastructure. We need to demine and clear the territories of explosive, hazardous objects. We need to restore energy infrastructure. We need to stabilize the economy. We need to create jobs. Another challenge is environmental restoration and agricultural recovery, mental and physical health of the population, as well as protection from information threats and disinformation. The role of startups in such contexts is huge. And startup industry is very promising when it comes to restoration, because they can contribute to developing smart infrastructure, helping us build smart cities. They also contribute to climate technology, alternative sources of power, as well as demining technologies, technology for agriculture, finance, and healthcare. And I would like to share examples of some startups that are already helping us to build our cities back in energy and agriculture. And here are some of them and areas that they work with. For example, if we're talking about security and defense, we have the following startups. Now, let's take a look at smart infrastructure and urban reconstruction. Now, moving on to energy and climate innovations. There are also quite a few pretty powerful startups. Among them, solar gaps, smart blinds that generate solar power. Now, agri-tech and food security. Here you can also see the list of the startups. Fintech and digital economy, which is also important for people who can access fintech. Healthcare and medical technologies also deserves a lot of attention. Asper Bionics is a very powerful startup. They are creating the so-called smart prosthetics that are adapting to users. This is also a very good startup founded by the Ukrainian creators. Another startup is Ajax Systems. Or let's take a look at Relief Paper, a startup that is using fallen leaves to produce eco-friendly paper. because currently we should not cut any more additional trees, and this is a very powerful environmental project. It is worth mentioning that tech startups play a crucial role for Ukraine's restoration. Summing up, it is worth mentioning that a benefit of having startups in the country are job creation, since as global data shows, startups generate more jobs in any country than other large companies in the same industry. And this, in its turn, will allow us to also attract people who moved abroad, bring them back to Ukraine. Another benefit is improving the standard of living, since startups develop innovations and technologies to restore and enhance living conditions for people who were affected by the war. And again, improving R&D, since startups can significantly drive research and scientific development. They can inspire innovators and researchers to implement ideas for the country's recovery. And the last but not the least is development and retention of young talent, keeping them in the country, creating jobs for them, and encouraging talented inventors and engineers to come back to Ukraine. Now, as a quick conclusion, it is worth mentioning that technological startups play a key role in dealing with strategic challenges when it comes to Ukraine's recovery. They can help contributing to improving economy, energy, healthcare, and also create modern, resilient economy, post-war economy in the rebuilt country that will be flourishing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Irina, for your meaningful insights. Please take notes, and at the end of this roundtable, you will be given the opportunity to ask your questions. And now I would like to give the floor to Marta Dmitryshin, who is an associate professor at the Department of Management and Administration at West Ukrainian National University. She is a visiting scholar at Madison, Wisconsin University. And Marta Dmitryshin will tell us about the role of entrepreneurial initiatives of internally displaced persons in preserving the cultural identity and the economic recovery of Ukraine. Thank you very much for inviting me. And first and foremost, I would like to tell you about, I would like to outline the key aspects of my presentation. Well, I will use an abbreviation IDP, which means internal displaced person. By internal displaced persons, I mean people who had to flee their homes due to the negative consequences of armed hostilities, occupation, violence, or violation of human rights, or due to emergencies. Entrepreneurial activity is an independent initiative which requires the economic operations and entails social results. The aim of these operations are obtaining income. And on this slide, you see the number of IDPs registered in Ukraine. According to the data of the Ministry of Social Policy as of 25th of March 2025, you see that the total number of IDPs is 400 4,600,000 people, and mostly they're concentrated in Donetsk, Kharkiv, and Luhansk regions. Over here, you see the demographic representation of IDPs and the age groups. Among those, there are particular categories like pregnant women, children under 18, or persons with disabilities. Apart from that, there are people who left Ukraine but got back to Ukraine after staying abroad for at least 2 weeks. And you see that the highest number of this category could be found in Kiev and Kharkiv regions. IDPs are entitled to benefits from the state. They're also entitled to financial support from volunteers, civil society, and international organizations. These benefits could be offered in the form of monetary allocations and as discounts, for instance, for paying utility bills, subject to requests. Apart from that, IDPs can seek support of their startups. They can start their businesses. Well, of course, not only IDPs, but also other people could enjoy these opportunities of getting support for their business. If those people engage in economic operations that are aimed at supporting IDPs. On this slide, you can see the list of programs that are available to the IDPs in terms of their support. There is the state program, that there are also grants for businesses that were relocated. Let's take a closer look at the grant program that is called Your Own Business, Vlastna Sprava. According to this program, the certain conditions have to be met. Depending on the number of jobs created, the amount of grant could be increased. Eligible participants are young people aged 18 to 25. They could get a grant of 150,000 hryvnia, and almost 6 billion hryvnia were allocated under this grant program. On this graph, we see that the highest amount of grants were offered for commercial activities, for sales, and for repairs. There is another project that is a state project that is called Ye Robota, a job. It offers funds for particular activities, for instance, for starting your own business, for starting processing plant, or for starting your own garden, or opening orchards. According to the data provided by the state fiscal service of Ukraine, we see the number of individual entrepreneurs in Ukraine. In total, in general, there were slight fluctuations in the number of individual entrepreneurs registered in Ukraine. There were some fluctuations in 2023, and we see that there was a slight decline in 2023, and now this trend is actually growing. We have more people being registered as individual entrepreneurs, and you saw the regions where there is the highest number of individual entrepreneurs. Now I'd like to tell you about success stories. Here you see a natural jam that is made by Andrei Borovy. He is from Izum. He is using specific recipes. And there is another case and another company that was started by an NDP from Luhansk. Here you see also Tatiana Fedorova, who is making clothes for pets, and Evgenia opened a pet barber shop, pet grooming shop. Another success story is a library that is also a cafe opened by Georgy Moskovets in Tokmak. And another story is the craftsman classes. Another success story is of Viktor Smirnov. He opened his own laundry and dry cleaners. He is from Slavyansk. And these enterprises that you saw are mostly focused on people with disabilities. The owner of the first one is a person with disability himself. Olga Likova is using the recycled plastic that is then used for shelters. Here we have the Pronins family with vegan desserts and Sobko with natural cosmetics. Volodymyr Malichin has beehives, 60 of them to be precise. Dmitry Biduk and Yuri Tustanovsky from Sumy are using coffee leftovers as the fertilizers for plants and the pots that are used for planting plants. You see Oksana Makarova, she is from Lysychansk. Tatiana Chernigova and Maria Bubnova are producing foods that could be preserved in case of power outages. They do not require refrigeration. Tatiana Chorna from Kharkiv is offering workshops on authentic embroidery, and Larissa Bodan is weaving uh, uh, carpets. Yana Zagorodnev from Energodar is doing woodwork, and the Dolly family um, use their recipes in traditional bakery business. Natalia Klemenko is collecting the dialects from the Eastern Steppe region, and Maria Artamenko from Kherson created very particular ethnic costume, which has not been mass marketed yet, and it has not been mass produced yet. The role of an IDP and its cultural identity is based on the idea of self-actualization. And we see that there are benefits at all levels, at individual level, at the level of the community, at the level of the state. As for a person, we see that they have profits and they are able to fulfill their potentials. And for the state, we see that it helps creating jobs and reduce unemployment. I I would like to interrupt you here. I'm sorry because we have our next panelist who is waiting to take the floor. There are certain measures that could be taken in order to remove the hurdles on the way for starting your own business if you are an IDP. If we apply those measures, we will get a synergy, and it will help IDPs grow and thrive. And to conclude my presentation, I would like to offer a Chinese saying. If you give fish to a man, that man would have food for one day. If you give a fishing rod to that person, this person will be fed for a lifetime. Thank you. And now I would like to give the floor to our next panelist, Yulia Sharon, an assistant professor at the Department of Management and International Entrepreneurship at Lviv Polytechnic National University. She will tell us about socio-psychological management methods in the post-war period. Yulia Sharon, do we have her with us? All right, I don't know why, but I cannot see Yulia Sharon over here. If not, I would like to give the floor to Yevgen Rechko. Yes, I'm ready, but I see Yulia. Somehow she's keeping silent. Can you hear me? Yes, yes, I can hear. Well, probably I was experiencing some issues with my headset. Just a second, I have a presentation, but somehow I cannot share my screen. Julia, if you need some time, we can give the floor to Yevgen right away. Yes, please, if you don't mind, I will go next after Yevgen. Then I would like to give the floor to Yevgen Rechko. He holds a PhD in history and he is an associate professor at the Department of Historiography, Source Studies, and Archaeology at Karazinin Kharkiv National University. And he is also part of the project that is financed by Alberta uh, Institute, and he will tell us about the use of digital technologies in the preservation and rethinking of Ukraine's cultural heritage during wartime and post-war reconstruction. Thank you. Julia, if you don't mind, I would like to ask you to stop sharing your screen, otherwise I will not be able to share mine. I'm sorry. This is the first time I'm experiencing such issues. Julia, at the bottom of your screen where you see share, you can unshare. Well, just a second. I cannot see the button. It will be at the bottom of your screen. Well, if you don't mind, I can start sharing my screen. I don't know, can you see it? Yes, yes, we can see it. Well, just a second ago, we saw Yevgen's presentation. Yulia, if you don't mind, maybe you could try leaving the conference and reconnecting. Well, if you can see my screen, maybe I will just let it show slides. Well, maybe I will go first. Well, no, we cannot see your presentation. We do not see your PowerPoint. Well, if you don't mind, I will just start showing my slides and I will finish my presentation and then I will leave the meeting if you don't mind. If that is all right with everyone. Apologies, this is just a new laptop. That is why I am a bit unsure how to use it. Well, somehow we cannot see your presentation. What about now? No, nothing.
Can you see my first slide? The second slide, yeah, can you see it? Okay, thank you so much. First and foremost, I would like to express the gratitude to the organizers of this amazing forum. It is a pleasure to be here with you today. And my presentation will be dedicated to using digital technology to preserve and rethink Ukraine's cultural heritage amidst war and post-war reconstruction. It is well known that since 2014, Russian military aggression against Ukraine has caused significant damage and destruction to the country's cultural heritage. The expert community considers the current damage to Ukraine's cultural heritage to be the largest in the Second World War. This war has posed numerous challenges to the preservation of Ukraine's cultural heritage and has highlighted many systemic problems related to legal, organizational, financial, material, technical, informational, and other aspects of cultural heritage protection. Given the diversity of Ukraine's cultural heritage, various approaches and technologies are employed to preserve it. In particular, the use of digital technologies has become especially crucial during the war. The full-scale Russian military invasion of Ukraine acted as a catalyst for the development of a digital national cultural heritage ecosystem. This ecosystem includes the creation of electronic registers of cultural heritage records and the digitization of cultural assets. For example, work is currently underway to establish an information communication system for registering immovable cultural heritage objects in Ukraine, titled the State Register of Immovable Monuments of Ukraine, and a National Digital Register of Cultural Property, titled the Register of the Museum Fund of Ukraine. In recent years, significant efforts have been made to digitize both movable and immovable heritage. Databases, interactive maps, 3D modeling, and other information technologies are extensively used to document the damage and destruction to Ukraine's cultural heritage because of the war. Additionally, various digital initiatives have become crucial for rethinking cultural heritage, serving as platforms for public debate and focal points that gather expert opinions and are trying to impact the activity of public institutions. We can say that currently there is an actual digital turnaround in the field of cultural heritage. This transformation is marked not only by growing interest in the use of digital technologies, but also by overcoming myth and misconceptions surrounding digital heritage. It is important to highlight that many advantages of using digital technologies in working with cultural heritage. According to the experts from the Reherit project, these advantages include, first, digital technologies enable the long-term and reliable preservation of cultural heritage sites. Second, they assist in documenting cultural heritage for the purpose of future restoration or recovery. Third, digital technologies play a crucial role in the communication promotion of cultural heritage sites. Fourth, they enhance the accessibility of heritage for learning and research purposes. And lastly, digital technologies form the foundation for digital products and other industries, with the mediatization of heritage being a prime example. The importance of using digital technologies becomes even more evident when considering Ukraine's post-war reconstruction. In general, digital transformations within the cultural sector are highly attractive for both domestic and foreign investment, and they also involve the training and engagement of specialists from various fields. Despite some notable achievements, the digital heritage sector in Ukraine is still confronted with a range of issues, including legislative, organizational, financial, human resources, technical, and methodological challenges. Many of these problems are systemic and long-term. Moreover, the use of digital technologies in the cultural heritage sector is often viewed uncritically. For instance, numerous interviews and comments from cultural heritage experts in Ukraine highlight the benefits of digital technologies without giving sufficient attention to the potential threats and challenges associated with them. I personally observed this during interviews conducted for the City and War project, which I initiated alongside my colleagues at Karasin Kharkiv National University with support from the Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies at the University of Alberta. To date, our team has collected 36 semi-structured in-depth interviews, totaling over 29 hours of recordings. When asked about the use of digital technologies for the preservation and promotion of Ukraine's cultural heritage in wartime, most of the experts we interviewed focused on the advantages of these technologies, with little or no mention of their disadvantages. Due to a lack of understanding of the long and complex process of digitalization that many economically developed countries have already undergone, Ukrainian experts are, figuratively speaking, trying to defeat the giant Goliath without not only weapons and armor, but even without a sling and stones. Rather than leveraging the existing positive experience of digitalization in the cultural sector, we're attempting to forge our own path. However, the flaws in this approach are becoming increasingly apparent. To illustrate this, I refer to the draft strategy for the development of culture in Ukraine for 2025-2030. It is currently under discussion in Ukraine. It is noteworthy that in this 40-page document, the term heritage appears 99 times, while terms such as digital, digitization, digitalization, and others appear 29 times. The strategy specifically addresses the systemic problems related to the digital transformation of the cultural sector. I will briefly outline some of such issues. The document highlights slow and uncoordinated digitalization. It mentions the lack of a national strategy that would define the general goals and limits of the digitization of cultural heritage. It points to the insufficient professional and technical capacity of cultural heritage institutions to manage the digitization process. Next, it notes the reluctance of state institutions to make collections public and the rejection of the idea to open. And also, each institution is on its own defining standards and publishing it only on their sources. That is why it is impossible to integrate it with other systems. We could also mention the lack of register for both public and private components of movable cultural heritage, as well as accessible systems and free resources. The draft strategy further acknowledges that these issues lead to a blurring of responsibilities for heritage preservation at the state, community, and institutional levels, resulting in an inability to effectively protect cultural heritage. This also hampers the ability to plan, communicate with stakeholders, and realize the full potential of cultural heritage. In addition to these problems inherent in Ukraine, it is also worth mentioning the general threats and challenges associated with the use of digital technologies for working with cultural heritage. And due to the lack of time, I'm not going to mention it, but I would like to only ask you to look at the state that mentions threats and challenges. And they are mentioned in the white paper titled Cultural Heritage and Digital Technologies that was prepared by the experts from the Reherit project. Thus, we find ourselves in a paradoxical situation. On one hand, digital technologies are being actively used in Ukraine to manage cultural heritage, and on the other hand, the many threats and challenges associated with the use of these technologies are often overlooked, gradually becoming systemic problems that could take decades to address. Another significant issue is that the recognition of these challenges often does not align with the widespread enthusiasm for digital innovation and the corporate culture of glorifying accomplishments. It is particularly noteworthy that there is still no systematic discussion or debate in Ukraine regarding the advantages and difficulties of using digital technologies for cultural heritage protection. The role of digital technology in the country's post-war reconstruction also remains uncertain. Clearly, to effectively harness the potential of digital heritage, it is essential to build a comprehensive digital infrastructure that can address the main systemic issues I have already mentioned them: legislative, financial, material, technical, human resources, etc. So the important task is to study the current state of this area. We need systemic monitoring of the ongoing digital projects and development of a long-term strategy for the creation, preservation, and utilization of Ukraine's digital heritage. In conclusion, I would like to emphasize that, fully aware of these challenges, my colleagues and I launched the initiative Digital Heritage in Ukraine, documenting digital projects as a part of the City and World 2.0. So our objective is to analyze the current state of the digital heritage sector in Ukraine and to identify the achievements and obstacles encountered in its development starting in 1990s to the present day. Our team is recording and publishing interviews with the initiators, managers, and implementers of digital heritage projects in Ukraine. Additionally, we are working on creating an electronic database of digital projects in the field of cultural heritage in Ukraine. And I hope that the presentation of this web resource will take place soon. Thank you for your attention. And thank you. Thank you for such a concise, interesting presentation. I would like to give the floor to Yulia Sherban. Once again, I'd like to mention that she will present about social psychological management methods in the post-war period. The floor is yours. Yes, we can see your presentation. Amazing. Please do not forget to unmute yourself, Yulia. We cannot hear you. Can you hear me now? Yes, positive. Okay, I'm so sorry. Again, I had some technical difficulties. So I would like to mention that the post-war period is always characterized by complex social, psychological, and economic challenges that require a special approach to staff management and organizational activities. It is socio-psychological methods of management in this context that acquire special importance, since they contribute to the harmonization within the society, and they also contribute to the restoration of the economy. These methods play an important role in creating a positive microclimate, adapting employees to new conditions, and ensuring effective communication among the employees and different levels of management. Based on the research conducted, we determined that the basis of social-psychological management is precisely the social-psychological motivation of employees, which is determined by both individual influence on employees and group motivation of a cohort of employees. Group social-psychological methods mainly consist in the formation and of the corporate culture of the enterprise, establishing relationship between employees, creating conditions for resolving conflicts, forming team spirit, and such measures include various examples that you can see on this slide. It is worth noting that in the post-war period, individual social psychological methods are of great importance. After all, it is an individual approach to employees and their needs that allows to mitigate negative consequences and increase the productivity of each employee. Also, here are the examples of individual social psychological methods on this slide that you can see on the screen. As previously mentioned, the foundation of social psychological management lies in the social psychological motivation in employees. Research into the scientific literature has shown that emotions are at the core of the driving force for the employee's action. Furthermore, having analyzed substantial motivation theories, we identified a sequence of internal activation of human motives and behavior through their needs. In accordance with this, it was determined that the foundation of any employee's activity or their inaction is the pursuit of expected positive emotions and or the avoidance of negative ones. Basically, satisfying the individual needs of employees will contribute to achieving those positive emotions they seek. And therefore, when creating an employee motivation system, it is crucial to stick to an individual approach and consider the needs of each employee. As examples of individual social psychological methods in large international corporations, the following are noteworthy. Sony Pictures offers their employees assistance with adoption. Also, they are provided free drinks and tickets to various cultural events. An original benefit comes from Apple. They are assisting their employees with egg freezing in case they first want to focus on their career before starting a family. They also organize sports competitions and different types of entertainment for their employees. WoodyMax offers housing assistance and covers their rent. Additional vacation payments, a free spa day, a shortened work day at the end of the week, and other perks. Microsoft provides entertainment in the office. And also they offer transportation for their employees in buses equipped with computer stations, allowing employees to use their time productively. Geronimo Martins provides assistance to employees with children with disabilities. For example, financial support to purchase rehabilitation equipment, therapy, or covers rehabilitation. Such approach from large companies highlights an individual approach to addressing the needs of their employees. In the post-war period, such actions will be particularly significant for many people. It is also worth noting that after the end of the war, people may face various emotional difficulties, such as anxiety disorders, depression, emotional burnout, challenges in adapting to past emotional experience. All of these issues can negatively impact their mental and physical health and the capacity to understand their own needs. And this can affect both the productivity and relationship between the employees. Therefore, the ability to manage the emotional component, and namely one's own emotions and the emotions of others, becomes particularly important in such a period. And an essential socio-psychological measure that can be implemented within an organization is increasing the emotional intelligence of employees. This will not only reduce the negative impact of emotional experiences on the psychological and physical health of employees, but will also enhance their ability to overcome stressful situations, think critically, be resourceful, and will contribute to the formation of the corporate culture and relationships between employees. As a result, this will contribute to increased performance and the overall efficiency of the company. To confirm this hypothesis, a study was conducted on the relationship between the level of emotional intelligence and employee productivity. The sample consisted of employees from design organizations and design departments of construction companies. The graph presented on this slide shows the average data. It is important to highlight the correlation between productivity and the emotional intelligence level. And one can tell, if we look at the average level of emotional intelligence, there is a close connection between productivity and the level of emotional intelligence of employees, which basically confirms this hypothesis. In conclusion, we can affirm that social psychological management methods in the post-war period play a key role in the restoration of both the economy and society as a whole. And effective management of people's own emotions and enhancement of employees' emotional intelligence will contribute to the growth of both social and financial results of the enterprise. Thank you. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Thank you. Thank you so much, Elena. I'd like to give the floor to the candidate of economic sciences, the senior teacher at West Ukrainian National University, Maria Daniluk. She will present about Carpathian high mountain sheep farming, restoration of the partly forgotten. Maria, are you here with us?
Yes, I'm here. So I'll try to take you on a journey to the Carpathian Mountains. Hopefully I'll succeed that and the technology will work. So I asked the previous speaker to stop their sharing so that I could share my screen. Colleagues, I believe I have stopped sharing my screen. Yulia, that's not the case, apparently. Yulia, maybe you can leave the room and then rejoin, because if you leave, I believe your presentation will no longer be on our screens. Okay, if you can still see my slides, let me leave and then re-enter. Okay, Maria, please share your screen. Maria, is everything working? I'm afraid not. For some reason, I cannot share my presentation, and for this reason, I suggest we go to the next speaker. Okay, we invite the Sergei Shevchenko, then, are you ready to speak? Yes, I'm trying to share my screen at the moment, if you can see it. Okay, in this case, let me introduce you. So he holds a PhD in economy. He works in the Department of Environmental Expertise in the Institute of Sustainable Development, the National Lviv Polytechnic University, with the talk Social and Economic Consequences of Agricultural Land Pollution Due to the Hostilities. So here, over to you. Sohi, we cannot hear you. You have very poor sound. Tatiana, in this case, with your permission, I will stop using my headset. Right. Is it better now? Sohi, this is perfect. Thank you. All right. Then I'll switch to English.
All spheres of social life, our task is to focus on aspects related to the ecological economy. In general, the issues that are in focus are next. The war has disrupted the ecological balance of Ukraine. Soils and waters are polluted, as well as natural landscapes are being destroyed. There is an urgent need to train specialists to restore the environment and ecosystems. It is clear that the ongoing war has left a significant impact on all areas of social life, and we are aware of the catastrophic scale of these consequences, which is why our approach is to start with small initiatives and gradually expand them to large-scale projects. So, the first direction at the moment, which is closer to us as residents of Lviv, is anthropogenic transformation of the ecological conditions of our city. The main challenge is to ensure effective management of Lviv's green spaces and develop a strategy for their restoration. Historically, our city has been known as a city of parks, and we aim to preserve this reputation for future generations. I will focus on several problems that we are studying. So, the first one is population increase. Lviv has become a major migration hub during the war. According to the Coordination Center of the Lviv Regional State Administration, approximately 6,700 people from frontline and occupied territories arrived in the region in 2024. The total number of internally displaced persons in the region has reached 210,000. The overall balance is adjusted with the local population that has left the country. This influx has led to an increase in transportation load, parking demand, and urban construction activity. All these and other factors impact the natural landscapes of Lviv, particularly by increasing recreational pressure on the city's green zones. In Lviv, green spaces are represented by 6 main types: forest and forest park areas, park and square plantings, linear planting along streets, green spaces on private plots, organized gardening associations and cemeteries, fragments on natural vegetation within the city's green zone. So, uncontrolled population growth in wartime conditions exacerbates the challenges. Talking about the densification of the city's development, we focused on the negative impact of reduced insulation, especially on the state of grass and shrub cover. One more issue that became the focus of the research is the uncontrolled cutting of trees in the city. Naturally, this was triggered by energy-related problems caused by Russian attacks on energy infrastructure. The country and the city faced prolonged power outages, which became particularly alarmed as winter approached. As a result, tree felling was observed in the city's park areas. Although justifications such as the hazardous conditions of old and damaged trees were announced, in many cases the process remained uncontrolled. Fortunately, thanks to the effort of our energy specialists, the situation was stabilized, but the damage caused has left its consequences. In 2023, a total of 3,598 trees were cut down in Lviv, while only 240 were planted. According to the city council, there has been no complete inventory of the city's green spaces. Among the trees that were removed, there were both hazardous or dead trees, as well as those cut down during reconstruction and construction works. As of today, the authorities report that the process is under control, with 1,478 permits issued the year 2024. Considering that the city has not yet conducted the inventory of its green spaces, and cases of authorized tree cutting for construction purposes are quite widespread. Thus, in conclusion, several key environmental challenges can be identified. First, degradation of natural landscapes. Parks and forests, park plantations in Lviv are significantly affected by anthropogenic activities, leading to changes in environmental conditions. Key factors include dense urban development and increased recreational pressure on green areas, resulting by the biodiversity loss and a reduction in ecosystem services. Littering and pollution. Pollution of soil and water resources, as well as the accumulation of solid waste in park zones, pose serious environmental threats. These processes not only reduce the aesthetic and recreational value of areas, but also create risks for local flora and fauna. Changes in the species composition of vegetation. The replacement of native species by invasive plants is the concerning trend that disrupts the ecological balance. The dominance of non-native species alters nutrient cycles, decreases biodiversity, and complicates the natural regeneration of ecosystem. Problems with the maintenance and restoration of green areas. The insufficient level of greening and preservation of park areas is caused by a lack of financial resources and clear management strategies. To ensure the sustainable development of urban green zones, it is necessary to implement effective vegetation care practices, conduct regular phytopathological monitoring, and introduce modern ecological restoration technologies. Another aspect I would like to briefly present is physical damage to the soil cover. The research on physical damage to the soil cover in Ukraine during the war serves several critical purposes. Crater formation from explosions, trenches, toxic substances released by rocket flights, and the movement of heavy machinery, all these factors affect soil quality and consequently the crops we grow. According to the preliminary calculations by Ukraine Ministry of Environmental Protection and Natural Resources, the full-scale Russian invasion has caused nearly 6,500 instances of ecosystem destruction, with total damage estimated to exceed 65 billion euros. However, these figures do not account for the damage sustained in temporary occupied territories. We have identified that soil destruction can be classified into four main types. Mechanical damage. This involves changes to the soil structure, which occur when the fertile layer of destroyed or mixed with other layers due to trench digging and fortification construction. After such changes, the soil loses its fertility, retains less wetness, and becomes less suitable for crops cultivation. Physical pollution. Physical pollution includes changes of the soil properties. Military vehicles can cause vibrations. Explosions and fires, apart from the direct destructions, disrupts the soil's thermal regime, which is critical for plant hydration and moisture retention. Chemical pollution. This occurs due to fuel leaks, combustion byproducts settling on the soil from the air, and toxins from explosive substances in ammunition. However, ammunition explosion cause not only chemical pollution, but also mechanical damage. The shock wave from explosion leads to soil erosion. Biological damage. Biological damage involves the destruction of all living organisms in the soil, particularly microorganisms responsible for maintaining soil health and fertility. These organisms are killed due to soil compaction, heat impacts, the destruction of soil horizons, and exposure to toxic substances from unexploded or exploded ordnance. These factors collectively demonstrate the critical and multi-phased damage caused by to the soil by military activities. The reclamation process will be long and lasting, costly and hazardous. Moreover, the natural recovery of land resources from pollution is estimated to take hundreds of years. Action plan for fields damaged by trenches, explosions, and other disturbances is next. Demining the area to ensure safety and remove unexploded ordnance. Digital mapping of the territory using satellite.
Пані Сергій, я попрошу стисліше трішки.
Останній слайд лишився. Monitoring with precise coordinate referencing. Removal of non-soil materials, including wooden, metal, and other waste. Refilling the soil. The order of soil layers must replace undamaged areas, with the top layer being the most fertile. So the challenges are significant, but so are the possibilities. The future of Ukraine is not just about survival. It is about thriving, leading, and inspiring the world with its resilience and vision for sustainable development. Thank you for your attention.
Дякую. Дякуємо, пан Сергій, за доповідь. І пані Марія, скажіть, чи ви маєте можливість демонструвати екран? Не чути. Вас не чути.
Так, спробую
Ага.
ще раз, будь ласка.
Спробуйте, якщо то я отримала вашу презентацію і зможу. Є. Так. Тільки ми бачимо пошту, я так розумію.
Угу. Ну, якщо ви маєте можливість, будь ласка, презентувати, щоб я не затримувала час, будь ласка.
Скажіть, чи видно?
Ні, мені прекрасно.
Добре, але тоді ви змушені казати мені завжди наступне.
Гаразд. Отже, шановне товариство, запрошую вас до своєї такої короткої екскурсії Карпатами. Хочу вам доповісти, власне, про карпатське високогірне вівчарство і про, власне, необхідність його відновлення в умовах війни, в умовах агресії, як необхідність відновлення
because it speaks to the need to return to our traditional crafts that is a manifestation of our culture and single us out among other nations. So sheep farming was a traditional type of economic activity for all Highlanders, and high mountain sheep farming covers part of Transcarpathian, Ivano-Frankivsk and Chernivtsi provinces. Obviously, we're witnessing technological progress. However, the tradition of sheep herding, of milking, remain, and they have been in place for hundreds of years, and sheep products are still made, even as we speak. So, sheep farming is not only a traditional activity for the Highlanders, rather it's a way of life. The Highlanders cannot imagine their life without a sheep. Why not? Because in the regions that I talked about, you cannot do any other economic activity but sheep farming. Because of poor soils, the soil isn't fertile enough to grow any crops, yet sheep grazing is the very activity these landscapes are ideal for. There's a dialect word for sheep in this region, and the meaning of that word is that, yes, a sheep is a small animal, yet this animal provided a huge amount of different products. So clothes were made from sheep wool. It's thick sheep fleece that was the source material for waistcoats. You can see some modern examples in the screen, but for hundreds of years, for centuries, these clothes were produced out of sheep, and it's excellent for healing back pain because sheep wool has unique healing properties. Apart from the waistcoats, you can manufacture socks, gloves, coats, etc., etc. So the sheep provided all the necessary clothes for the Highlanders. Now let us look at other products. Food is an extremely useful product. So you have different cheese types from sheep cheese, but sheep can also be used for meat production. According to the ministry information, the Brinza type of sheep cheese was the first product to have the regional designation certificate. What is that regional designation? So it's a certificate confirming unique characteristics of a product, that these characteristics are inherent only to this specific product, and these properties are unique for the products manufactured in this particular locality. Therefore, sheep Brinza cheese is designated with the certificate if the sheep are grazed about 700 meters above the sea level. So the sheep are not only milked, but the cheese is produced using just milk and added salts. Nothing else. And this would create this Brinza cheese. It's saddening that Melitopol black cherries are not the products that have these products that have this geographical designation, and I hope that soon we will have a chance to taste it. Now, let us talk about household items. They're traditional, and we're seeing some contemporary versions. Now, if you look at different covers covering pieces of furniture, carpets, children's toys, etc., all of that was produced from sheep wool. It's warm, it's durable, it's environmentally friendly. You can see national patterns weaved on those carpets, and they remain to this day. And some of the elements therein have been used for centuries in weaving techniques. So here you can see the loom where these products are produced. It's 100% natural sheep wool used, and traditional techniques are employed that ensures top quality and durability of those products. Next slide. This is a traditional craft. The reason being that around the profession they have their own professional vocabulary. This vocabulary covers household items associated with this profession. Also, there are several names for the sheep, for the shepherds, designating different types of responsibilities, those doing the actual grazing, those supervising the sheep all the time, or just part of the day. Okay, culture. This craft has an influence on the Ukrainian culture. It's much more than just economic activity. You can see the impact on the literature, on songwriting, on music, on painting, etc., etc. For example, the Carpathian nature was described by such writers as Ivan Franko, Marko Czeremszyna, and Olha Kobylanska.
And also, it is worth mentioning the Shadows of the Forgotten Ancestors, which also includes the description of the shepherd's life. The atmosphere of a summer on Polonina, which was a part and parcel of the life of Hutsuls, and everything that has to do with sheep husbandry. The shepherds were always conveying culture, reflecting the huge love for their motherland, because they had to perform these activities without having access to social infrastructure, without any infrastructure necessary for their life. That is why you have to love your land so much so that you would be able to spend about 5 months of your life there. Also, there is a documentary by Ostap Kostyuk that is titled The Living Fire. Basically covers the story of 3 Carpathian shepherds. And now, some statistics. Now, talking about communication. This is yet another important element. How do shepherds communicate? Because while migrating between Poloninas, they were always carrying information between the local people. One of the avenues to convey information and deliver messages is trombita. This is a sacred musical instrument. This is a means to convey everyday information, different messages. And with the help of trombita, people were informed about the lunch break or dinner, about the time to milk their sheep. They were looking for the lost sheep because the shepherds could go in different directions and still nevertheless communicate. Now, I'd like to draw your attention to this bar chart. It is pretty sad because we see that these bars keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller. This shows you the number of heads of goats and sheep. And the next graph also is demonstrating you the volumes of wool production. You can also see it on the next slide in a different type of a graph. On this map, you can see the number of sheep and goats by regions. Transcarpathian region has a bigger potential. People are still sticking to this activity, unlike in Chernovtsi and Ivano-Frankivsk Oblast, even though it used to be something very traditional for them back in the day too. What are the obstacles? What are the obstacles for this type of activity that is very typical for the highlanders in the Carpathians? First, fewer sheep. Decreased prices to purchase wool. When talking to the locals, I found out that the purchasing price is 15 to 20 Ukrainian hryvnia. We're talking about cents. But you probably would agree with me that it is not economically viable. And there is no proper support from the state. And the number of villages in mountains keeps decreasing too. Now, let us take a look at the opportunities in case we contribute to the development of highland sheep husbandry. We clearly can use the land that is not suitable for other types of agriculture into something that can bring profit. For example, the territory is covered with shrubs. We can contribute to more healthy foods. We should also make this a socially important profession so that these sheep herders can earn some decent money. And of course, it will contribute to the attractiveness of the region, because the sheep and all of the products that we manufacture from their milk, their wool, are creating the ethnical brand of the Carpathian region. And support to the traditional economic activity, contributing to its development, can draw more attention to this type of activities, and it can also contribute to increasing the number of the heads of sheep, because by demonstrating the products that are manufactured as the result of this activity, we can tell that there is demand in the market to purchase it. Thank you. Thank you, Maria. Well, this is a very interesting presentation to end this round of presentations. And now let us move on to Q&A. So, Sarah, I see. Were you raising a hand?
I was just clapping for the presenter. Thank you.
Okay. In case there are any questions, please mention who you would like to address your question to, and then proceed with your question. May I? Can I go ahead? Yeah, sure. Jump in. I will ask my question in Ukrainian, if you don't mind. I was so interested in Yevhen's presentation. Well, the thing is that I indirectly also have to do with the subject matter that he was presenting because of my family. My son-in-law is working on a similar project that is dedicated to memory. And basically, it is dedicated to digitalization of cultural heritage. And on multiple occasions, we had a discussion about how important it was to start sooner so that we would not be coming across obstacles of dealing with the occupied territories, because, you know, there was lots of challenges that pertain to cultural heritage that ended up under occupation, especially when it comes to the migration of our Ukrainian culture, basically pieces of art that were stored in museums and private collections. Therefore, my main question is, Ivan, what are the main obstacles to building the modern infrastructure of digital heritage preservation in Ukraine? Thank you so much for your question, Serhiy. Well, to be honest, there are quite a few obstacles, and I was trying to strike a balance in my presentation between the achievements that clearly are there and the problems, which are quite a few too. And yeah, there are quite a few obstacles. Most of them are systematic, but there is a national strategy for cultural development, and most of these problems are covered there, starting with the absence of the national strategy, because there should be some kind of the development program for this area, for the digital heritage, and it should not be some grassroots or local initiative. We need something that will cover the entire country. Some national strategy, the money should be allocated for this, and there should be a certain action plan. Now, speaking about action plan, just yesterday, I was talking to my colleagues and I suggested to introduce a new course at our department that will be dedicated to digital history. And I realized that we lack this kind of courses, even in universities. Yes, I have a background in history, so clearly I am interested in this specific aspect when it comes to digital history and digital humanities. But yes, it poses a huge challenge to train professionals who would focus on that, because we do not have relevant departments, we do not have relevant centers, and this creates a huge problem. Even when it comes to industrialization at the level of certain groups, unions, they are just not there, they do not exist. But yeah, and I would like to add to that the integration of our scholars into similar European institutions or American or Canadian is at a very low level, almost absent, to be more precise. Aside from that, you know, I've been thinking that there are multiple initiatives. Well, we can even call them volunteer initiatives. One of the examples is the Center for Digital History that was founded in Rivne. They have approved their charter in 2024. So such initiatives do emerge. There are also some state institutions, for example, the Movies Archive. So we have some pretty experienced institutions, and I might be mistaken, but I think that the level of collaboration between the state institutions and other initiatives is at a pretty bad level. And the state support for such initiatives is almost absent. They're usually funded by means of some grant funding or, in best case scenario, Ukrainian Cultural Fund. This is basically it when it comes to the support. That is why I think that there are quite a few obstacles. But I think that we should start with a more systemic set of issues. This is what matters. When we detect all of them, the problems that started back in the 90s, and they're still relevant. And after we have overcome them, it will become slightly easier. I hope I managed to answer. Thank you so much. You're saying that there are a few foundations and funds who have their registers, but my question is, can there be some kind of the umbrella register that will cover all types of art? And the second question is, what should form part of this register and what should not? And for example, say if a certain piece of art is in this register, then it's going to be more expensive and it's going to be more relevant. Well, I cannot comment regarding prices. But I'm asking about the register. Yeah, you're trying to figure out whether it's going to make it more important or less important. This is something that we're currently discussing, creating the integrated databases that will bring together various types of heritage. And this is one of the challenges of what is happening. I mentioned that when different standards, different approaches are being used, when all of this has happened in a different way at the local level, and compiling it within one database will be impossible. And it is obvious now, even in this draft national strategy emphasizes that we will not be able to compile it within one integrated system. And this poses a huge problem. For you to better understand the size of this problem, I suggest to go into this museum register that I have mentioned in my presentation. According to different calculations that I've already mentioned that during my seminar presentation, that we do not know how much cultural heritage we have. There are about 12 million items. If we're talking about museum items, 12 million items. And if we look at how many of them are covered by this register that was announced by the Ministry of Culture and Strategic Communications, last time I checked, they had around 30,000. Well, you can do the math and tell what percent it forms from millions. And that is also mentioned the peculiarities of the corporate culture. And we have very good professionals, that is true. But I think that sometimes, there are some prejudice that something should not be made public, something should not be shared with others. Many things can be digitized and scanned, but all of it is hidden from the broader public. And this is yet another problem that we have to overcome. And one more thing that I mentioned during my presentation is that we lack discussions and deliberations. On my slide, I mentioned the workshop by Ukrainian Culture Fund, and this is probably one of very few examples. But if you try looking for other similar discussions, trust me, you will not be able to find anything similar to it. So, thank you so much. Thank you, Yevhen. We have more questions. Svetlana, the floor is yours. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank all the presenters for such an interesting, substantial, and relevant roundtable. And I would like to say to Maria Daniluk that it was a pleasure listening to your presentation because I grew up in the Carpathian and I still remember those shepherds back when I was a kid. So it was so nice to listen about bringing back this sheep farming. And it is amazing that you have also mentioned the documentary movie. And actually, our postgraduate student, Sean Williams, helped with translating it. So, It is crazy how small this world is. And I have one question to Irina Litvin. I'm so sorry. Maybe I wasn't listening carefully. You were talking about various startups. You provided examples of such startups. My question is, who is funding them? Where do they source money from? Thank you. Thank you for this question. The startups are funded by different sources. Usually this is a step-by-step funding. So classical startups are funded by business angels, basically rich private individuals who are individual investors. They become mentors for these startups. And aside from that, also venture capital funds. And it is a global approach. There are international powerful funds, Ukrainian funds. Of course, amid war, foreign investors do not have that much risk appetite when it comes to Ukrainian startups due to the heightened risks of such investment. But 2024, when we're talking about the investment size, the startup ecosystem is back on track. Almost 50% managed to get back on track. So the investors are investing. And especially we're talking about military tech, defense tech, startups, everything that is relevant when it comes to our country defense. And let us not forget about grants. Military tech is actively funded by grants. Ukrainian and foreign investors, as well as donors. Thank you. Thank you, Irina. Are there any more pending questions from the participants? From what I can tell, no one is raising their hand. Well, then I would like to ask Maria Daniluk. Have you heard of any examples when IDPs decided to go into sheep farm? And maybe Martha could also add it, because she was also talking about the entrepreneurial activities of the IDPs. Thank you for this question. Well, talking about sheep husbandry, probably not, but we do have a cheese manufacturing in the vicinity of Pasif. There's a lady who was extremely interested in cheese manufacturing. Well, this is not cheese produced in Polonina, but something more commercial. But this lady is very well aware of technology and cheese manufacturing. That is why she works at Midney Chan, a cheese manufacturer. She successfully employed there, she found her place. And she's a very good professional. So yeah, they do participate in such activities. Are there any more questions? Then I have one more quick question to Marta. So how does entrepreneurial activity help IDPs to fully become part of the community that they moved to? Well, first and foremost, we're talking about communication, sharing experience, looking for customers, clients, maybe also learning some traditions. And I would like to touch upon your previous question that you addressed to Maria. A few examples cross my mind. When IDPs moved to Yaremchik or Transcarpathia, and clearly they not necessarily are engaged in sheep farming. People join educational projects or they start working at cheese dairies. And It helps people adapt, and it shows that we truly are same people, that we're one nation, we have a lot in common. Thank you, Marta. I would like to thank all the participants of this roundtable. I'd like to thank the organizers. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Svetlana. This was an incredibly interesting roundtable. And now I'd like to give the floor to Svetlana so that she can give the floor to the next panel.